Okay, today we're going to talk about dividing polynomials. The first thing we're going to talk about is what happens when you divide a polynomial by a monomial. So all these on the front are dividing by monomials. This one, you have this polynomial that's a fraction. All these terms, the three terms in the numerator, have to be divided by the single term, the monomial term in the denominator. So we're going to do 6x to the fourth y cubed divided by 3xy. Then we're going to plus 12x cubed y squared divided by 3xy. So I'm taking this term and this term, dividing them both. And then I'm going to subtract 18x squared y divided by 3xy. And then you're going to use your knowledge of monomials, how you divide monomials. When you look at their coefficients, you divide the coefficients, and then the trick here is to subtract the exponents. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. These both have an exponent of 1. 4 minus 1 is 3, so x to the third. 3 minus 1 is 2, y squared. That's your first term. Then 12 divided by 3 is 4. Again, 3 minus 1 is 2, x squared. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we're left with a y. We're going to subtract 18 divided by 3 is 6. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we have x to the first. And then here you have a y over a y divided by y is 1, so that reduces to 1, or those cancel. So we don't have any y variable left. So this is our simplified expression here. The next one on this, I should have had parentheses around here because we're not just dividing this first term. I wanted you to divide this whole thing. The only difference here, instead of a fraction, it's written out with the division sign. So we're dividing this whole trinomial by this monomial. So here I'm going to divide by 4 CDF, divide by 4 CDF, and divide by 4 CDF. Again, all these variables in the bottom have a coefficient of 1. So an exponent of 1. The coefficients here, 20 divided by 4 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3, so we have c cubed. 2 minus 1 is 1, so we have a d, and then those f's cancel. 4 goes into 16 4 times, so we're going to subtract 4. The c and the d cancel, and we're left with 1 f here. Over here, 4 goes into 4 one time, and all the variables cancel. Okay, so this fraction, if the whole thing reduces, it reduces to 1. Often kids say it cancels and nothing's left. It doesn't reduce to 0, it reduces to 1. So that's your simplified term here. Here you have this whole thing times 3xy to the negative first power. Now we already talked about negative exponents. We said that, say you have 2x squared y to the negative third. If you have a negative exponent, it's like dividing by that variable. So instead of writing 2x squared y to the negative third, we would write 2x squared divided by y to the third. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do here is divide. Since it's just a negative first, it's not going to change this thing at all. It's just going to put it in the denominator, which means we're going to divide by that. So I'm going to divide 18 by 3. Okay. 18 divided by 3 is 6. And then, so let's go ahead and write that out. 18x squared divided by 3xy plus 27x cubed y squared z divided by 3xy. And let's reduce that. 3 goes into 18 6 times. You subtract this. 2 minus 1 is 1, so I have 1x. But then I have a y, and it's left in the denominator. Okay, so we're going to leave it like that. Here, 3 goes into 27 9 times. When you subtract the exponents, 3 minus 1 is 2, so we got an x squared. We have a y left and a z. So here's the simplified expression for that. Okay. On the inside, we're going to talk about what happens if you divide a polynomial by 2 terms. The front was just 1 term. The front would have just been x. Here it's 2 terms. So we're going to refresh over long division. Long division here we have 1,169 divided by 7. 7 is the divisor, and 169 is the dividend. So the next thing, how many times 7 go into 1? It doesn't. So we're going to look at 11. 7 goes into 11 one time. 1 times 7 is 7. So you subtract 7 from 11, and you get 4. We bring down the 6. 7 goes into 46 6 times. 6 times 7 is 42. So we're going to subtract 42 and bring down 46 minus 42 is 4. We're going to bring down the 9. 7 goes into 49 7 times. 7 times 7 is 49. So we have no remainders left. Okay. So 7 goes into 1,167 times. We talked about that, or if you're going back to 4th grade or 3rd grade when you learned this, you know 7 times 167 is going to give you that. So if we can multiply these two to get this, or this divided by 7 would give us that. Let's try another one, and I'll show you what I want you to do with your remainder here. We're going to divide 1,374 by 5. 5 doesn't go into 1, so we look at 13. 5 goes into 13 2 times. 5 times 2 is 10. We're going to subtract. You get 3 when you subtract. You bring down the 7. 5 goes into 37 7 times. 7 times 5 is 35. Subtract 35. You get 2. Bring down the 4. 5 goes into 24 4 times. 5 times 4 is 20. We subtract 20 and we get 4. Now, we don't have anything left to bring down. If you turn it into a decimal, you put a decimal place and add a 0 and bring a 0 down. We're not going to do that. We're going to say we have 4 remainders. So we have 4 that still need to be divided by 5. So we're going to say we have 247 and 4/5. Okay? Those 4 still need to be divided by 5, and we're just not going to reduce it to a decimal. Okay? So, when we're dividing polynomials, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write the first trinomial as the dividend. So we're doing an x squared plus 3x minus 40. We're dividing that whole thing by x minus 5. Okay, so you have the first thing you want to say is, what do I have to multiply x by to get this first term? So find what you need to multiply so you get the first term. Well, x times x would give me an x squared. So I'm going to put an x here. I'm going to put it over my x term. X times x is x squared. X times a negative 5 is a negative 5x. You have to multiply everything in the divisor and rewrite it underneath. Okay, so I multiply x times x, I get x squared. I have to multiply x times this negative 5. I get a negative 5x. The next thing we did up here, 1 times 7 is 7, and then we subtracted 7. Okay, so here we're going to subtract this whole polynomial. When you subtract this binomial, you have to distribute that subtraction sign, so this changes to a minus, and this will change to a plus. When you distribute a subtraction sign, it changes. So what happens when I have x squared minus x squared? No more x squareds. Then I'm going to combine these. That means I have 8 x's. And then I'm going to bring down that 40, so I have minus 40. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start over. So subtract, make sure to distribute the subtraction sign and start over. So what times x would give me 8x? Okay, well, positive 8, so I'm going to write plus 8. 8 times x is 8x. 8 times negative 5 is a negative 40. And then I'm going to subtract this whole thing, and I got to distribute my subtraction sign. Then that changes that to a negative and this to a positive. My x's cancel, my 40s cancel, and I'm left with nothing. So that means I have no remainder. This is my answer, x plus 8. What that means is, another thing just to observe, since this times this gives me the dividend, we know that x plus 8 times that x minus 5, these two binomials, when I multiply them together, should give me this trinomial that's underneath. Okay, let's try one more. Let's look at this one. You got an x squared minus 13x plus 12. We're going to divide it by x minus 1. You're saying what times x will give me x squared? Well, x times x gives me x squared. X times x is x squared. X times negative 1 is a negative 1x. Then I got to subtract that whole binomial, so I have to distribute the subtraction sign. This turns that into a negative. This turns that into a positive. So my x squareds cancel. A negative 13x plus 1x is a negative 12x. And then I'm going to bring down that negative 12. Sorry, bring down that positive 12. Here I have the next thing you start over, you say, what do I have to multiply x by to get negative 12x? I have to multiply by a negative 12. Negative 12 times x is a negative 12x. Negative 12 times negative 1 is a positive 12. Okay. Then I have to subtract this binomial. So when I subtract that binomial, I distribute. This changes to a positive. This changes to a negative. These cancel. These cancel. I'm left with no remainder. So my answer is x minus 12. Okay. Let's do two more. This one, both of these are going to give us a remainder, and we'll talk about what you do here. So you got x cubed minus 8x squared plus 4x minus 9, all divided by x minus 4. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here, what times x would give me this x cubed? I need an x squared. X squared times x gives me x cubed. X squared times negative 4 gives me negative 4x squared. And I'm going to subtract that, subtract this, add this. Let's see what happens. My x squareds cancel. A negative 8 plus 4 is a negative 4. Bring down that positive 4x and start over. I got to get a negative 4x squared. So I need a negative 4 and I need another x to give me that x squared. So negative 4x times x is negative 4x squared. Negative 4x times a negative 4 is a positive 16x. Okay. When I subtract this, this turns to a positive. This turns to a negative. My x squareds cancel. 4x minus 16 is a negative 12x. And I'm going to bring down that negative 9. One more time just for kicks. Start over. What times x would give me this negative 12? I need a negative 12. Negative 12 times x gives me a negative 12x. Negative 12 times a negative 4 gives me a positive 48. When I subtract that, that negative 12 turns into a positive, and that positive 48 turns into a negative. When I combine the x's cancel each other out. I have a negative 9 and a negative 48. That's a negative 57. And I have nothing else left to bring down. So this is a remainder, which means I have negative 57 that still need to be divided by this x minus 4. So we're going to write it as a fraction. So we'll write minus 57 divided by x minus 4. Okay, let's do one more. Here we have this trinomial, and it's being multiplied by this thing raised to the negative first, which means this whole trinomial is really going to be divided by that a plus 2. So let's do it. We got an a cubed minus 6a squared plus 1. Notice we don't have an a term, so that's going to turn out a little weird for us here in a second, but we'll look at what you do next, okay? The next thing we're going to do is we're going to see what do I need to multiply a by to get a cubed? Well, I need an a squared. A squared times a is a cubed. A squared times 2 is a positive 2a squared. I'm going to subtract that, so that turns to a negative. This turns to a negative. These cancel. Negative 6 and negative 2 is a negative 8a squared. And then we bring down that 1. Okay, what do you have to multiply a by to get a negative 8a squared? I need a negative 8a. A negative 8a times an a is a negative 8a squared. And negative 8 times 2 is a negative 16a. When I subtract this, this changes to a positive. This one changes to a positive. The a squareds cancel, but can I combine 16a with 1? Okay, those are not like terms. So I have 16a, and then I have that plus 1. Since I don't have anything else to bring down, this is my remainder. So I have this whole thing that still needs to be divided by a plus 2. So I have 16a plus 1 divided by a plus 2. That's your remainder. And this whole thing right here is your answer to that division problem.